Section 6. Breaking the Silence, Finding My Voice. My voice that was mute again in the classrooms growing up had been mute and silent when I found myself standing in front of a judge. Similarly, I hardly said anything to anyone after the devastating events in 2006. For years, I had carried my shame in silence, believing that no one would ever truly understand. I had wasted time searching for validation from people, my so-called family, who had already shown me who they were: narcissistic, indifferent, incapable of caring. I kept thinking that if I just explained myself the right way, if I just found the perfect words, they would finally see me. They never did. All that silence had done was bury me deeper in shame. Shame that wasn't mine to carry. It had never been mine to carry. Injustice does not resolve itself. It lingers, it poisons, and it does not go away just because the world moves on. I had tried to heal in private, but healing cannot exist in isolation. I could not build a future while hiding from my past. And so, for the first time, I understood. I had to tell my story. Chapter 25. After the fall, a voice. Someone saved my life. I might never have written this book if that conversation hadn't shattered my isolation and made me question what I thought I knew, that I was alone, unworthy, unlovable. It was a Sunday night in the hospital, but time meant nothing. The hours blurred together as I paced the dimly lit hallway outside the nurse's station, sleepless and invisible. I moved in and out of shadows, unnoticed by the staff, wrapped in a quiet desperation. The suicidal thoughts had returned, not loud or dramatic, but like a slow leak in a sinking ship. The kind of thoughts that whisper, "This will never change. You will never be free, not truly." In 2006, I had come to this same hospital in crisis, a cry for help, more impulse than intent, but this time had been colder, calmer, more like surrender. I had survived, but I didn't know if I wanted to. Then came a voice, soft, tentative. "You can't sleep either." It was Kira, 21, sharp-eyed and clear-souled. She had seen through my silence in a way few had before. I don't remember exactly what I told her first. Maybe it started with fragments, a false accusation, a life torn away. But she looked at me and said what I never expected. "Oh, I believe you. 100%. Those words were like water in the desert. She didn't ask for proof. She didn't shrink away. She believed me. And something inside me exhaled. For the first time in years, maybe she just said the right thing at the right moment. Maybe I was finally ready to hear it. But that moment cracked something open, a space I had sealed off long ago. It made me wonder, what if I wasn't destined to carry this in silence forever? A few days later, I found myself in the TV room with a few others. At this point, I was joining others. I had enjoyed Law and Order, SVU, but the topic of this episode could not have come at a more appropriate time. This episode was different. The plot mirrored my own life. A teacher, falsely accused of a heinous crime, his life dismantled by lies. I sat frozen. Every scene struck me like a nerve. The disbelief, the humiliation of a false accusation, these were experiences I knew very well. The story was powerful. The police soon realized that the teacher was innocent, but the damage had been done. He didn't know if he would be able to work in his field. The character was in tears, doing an excellent job of portraying the intense pain of this accusation. While it was fictional, I felt like the authors who wrote this story had known of an incident like this. I had to share what I was noticing and how I could relate to this story. During the commercial break, I stepped out to tell two ladies that I wanted to share something when they returned. I was making it inevitable that I would share my own experience. People by now knew that I had been a therapist and cared about others. As everyone returned to the room, there were now about 5 or 6 of us. I can relate to all of this, I said. I then added, I was falsely accused of a violent crime many years ago. I didn't think I'd ever be able to work in the field again. It destroyed my life. That is why I'm here. Then someone spoke. I'm so sorry that happened to you, Bruce. It seemed like it would be easy to understand how this would harm someone. Those words, so simple, so human, broke something loose, not because they erased the past, but because they reminded me I wasn't beyond compassion. Later that week, I joined a group activity. I encouraged another patient to attend. We were given words to represent our feelings and paints to express them visually. I chose words like misfit, outcast, invisible, and outsider. I wanted to amplify the negative feelings and the cold and isolated feelings that go along with these words. When it was my turn to share, I don't know what I expected. Instead, the man I had convinced to come said, You're not invisible. You got me here. You're everywhere. You're like the social butterfly of this place. Others chimed in. They spoke of my presence, my kindness. My jaw dropped. Was that really me? How had I not noticed this myself? They saw someone I didn't know existed anymore, maybe had never met. And for the first time in years, I believed that healing might be possible, not because I was cured, but because I was no longer alone. Kira and I spoke again. She said I should meet her family for Christmas. We never did, but Eli, my ex-wife, still so compassionate, paid for us to go to a movie together. It was a simple gesture, but it felt like life was nudging me forward. I left the hospital not healed, but opened. I had stepped out of the shadow of suicide into something like possibility. And for the first time in a long, long time, I wasn't just surviving. I was beginning to live. I should have thought of reaching out and trying to connect with others sooner than this. To be clear, my problems had been trying to get my own family to understand my pain and what I had experienced. I had been telling myself, as I stated earlier, that if my own family didn't care, then who would? This had created a sense of a world without caring or connection. The hospital doors had closed behind me, but their weight still pressed against my shoulders. I had become extremely anxious for my ride to take me home from the hospital. I was no longer suicidal. I felt a newfound sense of hope. Ailey paid for me to meet with a friend that I met in the hospital named Kira, and for us 3 to see a movie. It was amazing how much this cost and how invested Ailey was in my healing. This was right after Christmas. Kira had intended to have me visit her family for Christmas, but she was promising things without getting an okay from her family. I stepped out of the hospital on the 23rd of December, 2019. I was not healed, but I was different. I wasn't carrying the weight of the past alone. I shared it with others. I had told my story. Admittedly, it was a very abridged version of the story, but the simple concept that a false conviction can destroy a human life was something others could understand. The full story is this book. Star Wars 9 reached the theaters at that time, and Ailey wanted me to make a new friend, and so she offered to pay for movie tickets for me, Kira, and herself. This was Saturday, December 28th, 2019. Kira's father brought her and then picked her up after the movie. It would turn out that Kira was dealing with serious issues of her own, and this meant that her interest in trying to help me or be a friend to me would not last long,